A beef between two titans of the New York music scene hits the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Why 50 Cent was brought up this week during emotional witness testimony. Combs and 50, they've been at odds for a long time. And now, one of them's facing the possibility of spending the rest of their life in federal prison, and the other is not holding back or hiding the apparent joy they find in that possibility happening with a guilty verdict.
What's unfolding right now isn't just another loud disagreement dressed up as entertainment. It's the moment where years of tension finally collide with a public narrative that can't be controlled, edited, or buried. When something drops into the mainstream that reframes the past.
To go back a long time, they have been rivals for a long time. And this week we learned that, at least from Diddy's side of things, this feud apparently went far beyond words. 50 Cent's name came up during the testimony this week of Capricorn Clark. She is a former assistant of Sean Combs, who went on to become the head of marketing for his Sean John clothing brand. Clark rose successfully and professionally through the ranks of Diddy's world during her time working for him, which stretched between 2004 to 2018, so she saw a lot. Clark claimed that Diddy would threaten her, and she says he even kidnapped her in 2011. All of this matters as we build up to how 50 Cent kind of factors into what she said on the stand. Now, Capricorn Clark started working for Bad Boy after she worked for Death Row Records. Now, that's surprising, since Death Row was ran by perhaps Diddy's most hated enemy, Suge Knight. Clark said that one of her good friends had a baby with Suge Knight, and that's how she knew him. And in perhaps the most shocking story from her testimony, Clark claimed that shortly after she started working for Diddy, Diddy and his security guards took her to Central Park after dark, and Diddy said, quote, "He told me he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight, and if anything happened, he would have to kill me." It is an allegation that paints Combs as someone who is ready to take a life. But as Capricorn Clark's testimony continued, she brought up another rival of Sean Diddy Combs and another allegation that he made an ominous threat of violence. Clark testified, when working for Diddy, they went to a press event at MTV and 50 Cent was there. And just wait until you hear what she says Diddy told 50's manager. 50 Cent's real name is Curtis Jackson. He rose to fame in the early 2000s. You might remember songs like In the Club. You might remember that he was the leader of the rap group G-Unit. Now, 50 grew up in Jamaica, Queens, New York. Diddy, also a New York native. He was born in Harlem, grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, just about 20 miles away. And even though they both had success in music, they both rose to fame representing the city of New York and the rap scene there, they have been longtime rivals. In 2006, 50 Cent released a diss track about Diddy. So almost 20 years ago, this goes back a long way. And in that diss track, he says, quote, "Who shot Biggie Smalls? We don't get 'em. They gon' kill us all. Man, Puffy know who hit that expletive. Man, that expletive soft." Now, 50 is accusing Combs there of knowing who killed his friend, the notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace. Wallace and Puffy were incredibly close, but Wallace was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in 1997, and no one has ever been charged for pulling the trigger. This all happened during really the height of the East Coast-West Coast rap rivalry of the 90s, which involved Suge Knight, who we mentioned earlier. 50 Cent has also accused Diddy of orchestrating the murder of death row rapper Tupac Shakur, who died in 1996 in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting. This is Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He was arrested in September 2023, and he is the only person facing charges related to Tupac's murder. But 50 Cent has continued to push the allegation that Sean Combs either knows something or did something for Tupac to end up dead, though Diddy has denied that. But in a 2023 Instagram post, 50 wrote, "Damn, so Pac got lined by brother love, LOL, time to lawyer up, expletive might get sticky," with a pic of Suge Knight in a car with Tupac. Diddy, who has a lot of names, Puff Daddy, Puffy, Puff, and brother love is one of those other names. Now, from Diddy's side of things,
it doesn't just stir conversation, it forces confrontation. And that's exactly what's happening here. For a long time, this rivalry lived in the background. It survived on glances, on coded comments, on moments where silence did more damage than insults ever could. It was never resolved because it was never meant to be. As long as both sides could operate in their own lanes, the tension stayed manageable, contained. But containment only works until an outside force steps in and changes the rules. That outside force came in the form of a revelation that didn't ask for permission. Suddenly, the past wasn't a private asset anymore. It wasn't something to be selectively remembered or conveniently forgotten. It was repackaged, redistributed, and placed in front of an audience that doesn't care about legacy politics or unspoken hierarchies. Once that happened, the feud stopped being optional. This is what pushes things to the breaking point. Because when a narrative escapes the people who built it, the instinct is to fight back, not with truth, but with dominance, with volume, with presence.
Again, he's denied having anything to do with Tupac's murder, and he's also denied having anything to do with Christopher Wallace's death, and he's denied publicly having issues with 50 Cent. Here's what Combs said when he was asked about a beef with 50 in a 2018 interview with the radio show The Breakfast Club, Power 105.1 FM.
Hey, yo, I don't have no beef with
I don't know why.
With Fifth. He loves me. He loves me.
Do y'all really
can't
have
see
a
it?
beef?
I mean, y'all can't see it.
No, we can't see
Y'all
it,
can't
man.
see that he loves me?
But see,
you really think that's hate?
If you look at 50's social media, you can see he has a lot of posts about Diddy. And this is what he posted the day that federal agents in Miami raided Combs' mansion ahead of his arrest on the charges that he's now on trial for. 50 Cent posted on X, "Now it's not Diddy do it, it's Diddy done. They don't come like that unless they got a case." 50 Cent also included a link to his G-Unit clothing brand in that post. While Diddy in the Breakfast Club clip said that 50 Cent actually loves him and there was never a beef, on the stand this week, Capricorn Clark said otherwise. Clark said that she was at this press event at MTV with Diddy and 50 Cent was also there, all of this happening in New York. Clark said, quote, "After the interview wrapped up, myself, Puff, and Chris Lighty got in the elevator." Clark said that Lighty was an entertainment manager who, on paper, was managing Diddy at the time, but was also 50 Cent's manager at the time. Prosecutors asked Clark what happened in the elevator, and she said, quote, "Puff told Chris, because they were having some sort of issue, like, I really don't like all the back and forth. I don't do that. I like guns." The prosecutor then asked, "What's the issue with an individual?" And Clark responded, he had an issue with 50 Cent. She said Combs was very serious when he said that. In this case, it has become common to hear testimony from witnesses about alleged threats by Diddy. In fact, several witnesses have said that Diddy regularly threatened to fire people, to beat people, like his former girlfriend Cassie Ventura, and in this case, making a threat involving firearms to settle a dispute per the testimony of someone who was one of his closest associates for more than a decade. Invoking gun violence and some sort of veiled threat, that could be scary for some, but apparently not 50 Cent. On Instagram, 50 posted right after his name came up in the courtroom, quote, cut, wait a minute. Puffy's got a gun? I can't believe this. I don't feel safe," with a picture that looked like an AI image of 50 Cent on a movie set looking serious. And he wasn't done. Shortly after that, he posted another AI image on Instagram of him in a Yankees hat with a very scared look on his face with the caption, "Oh my goodness, itty bitty Diddy wants me dead. I have to lay low," sad face emoji. "I think I'm gonna hide out at the playoff game tonight, LOL." Then the next day he posted what he did that night. He went to the NBA playoff game between the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers in Indiana. And you can see him here in a picture on the floor in a shirt that reads, quote, "Free Diddy," playing into the trolling that 50 Cent has done to Sean Combs over the years, even before Combs was ever accused of what he is on trial for. Now, Combs' trial is expected to last another month at least. He's charged with racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Join us now to talk more about the trial of Sean Diddy Combs and everything that's going on.
Whoever controls attention controls perception, or at least that's how it used to work. But attention today is fragmented, chaotic, and ruthless. What we're watching is two power structures colliding under that pressure. One side reacts by leaning into intimidation, trying to reassert authority through posture and bravado. The other responds by amplifying the chaos, letting the situation spiral because chaos weakens control. Neither approach is clean, neither is calm. Both are fueled by ego more than clarity. And ego is always fragile under scrutiny. The revelation itself isn't even the most important part anymore. It's the reactions that followed, the sudden urgency, the inability to ignore it, The way every move now feels defensive instead of confident. That shift is subtle, but people notice it. Audiences are good at sensing fear disguised as arrogance. When someone is truly unbothered, they don't need to perform indifference. This face-off didn't escalate because of facts alone. It escalated because of implication. Because stories don't have to accuse directly.
Inside the courtroom is Afi Patterson, civil and criminal defense attorney. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. We're focusing on what was a minor moment in the grand scheme of everything we heard in the trial this week, but there's this anecdote that Capricorn Clark told about what related to 50 Cent, but what Diddy allegedly told 50 Cent's manager at MTV during her time of working for Diddy. What did you make of that? Sean Combs saying, I don't like the back and forth, but I like guns.
I think it goes to the overall case. They've been saying that Diddy was a dangerous guy. If he made a threat, he could back it up. And I do recall reading that she said that his demeanor was very, very serious. And knowing the history, knowing his history, his violent history, knowing about the beef between Biggie and Tupac, I think that it probably frightened her. And I think that just again, her knowing about his violence, his propensity for violence, his behavior with her, his behavior with Cassie, his behavior with other employees, he's just continually in reinforcing that violence. So I think it was a really good moment for the government.
Yeah, it's just, and it seems like there are these little moments along the way where there are some celebrity names that pop up. This case, it was 50
Mhm.
Cent. We heard earlier in the trial, Usher and Neo were at a dinner where Cassie was allegedly assaulted. It was unclear whether they saw that, but it was said that they were there. As far as the history of 50 Cent and Diddy, do we know how it started? I know that 50 Cent had a diss track, I think around 2006, claiming that
Mhm.
Sean Combs knew who killed Biggie Smalls, but is there a particular incident that happened that made 50 Cent just seem to really start to come at Sean Combs?
I don't know what's ground zero for them. I've seen, interviews that 50 has given saying that it's all business with them. I know they both have alcohol lines, and I know, they're both from New York. I think 50 is maybe from Queens and Diddy is from Harlem. I don't know what their ground zero is, but I know that since this since this all came out, 50 has not stopped. He's been taunting Diddy online. You, of course, know about the documentary. I believe it got picked up by Netflix, and he is supposedly donating the proceeds to victims of domestic violence. Diddy has had his knee on his neck and his foot to the gas on Diddy for a while, but again, I don't know where it started.
Yeah, I mean, 50 Cent, for many people, if it was ever, there was an anecdote that came out that someone had said, oh, I like guns when talking about a back and forth, it might scare you. 50 Cent was at the
Mhm.
Knicks Pacers game in Indiana with a free Diddy t-shirt on, sitting courtside the next day. That's
Was
just,
he?
it's different. It was, yeah, it was different.
Mhm.
I look back and we aired a bit kind of leading into this interview, a clip from the Breakfast Club. It was 2018 and Diddy was on the show and they asked about the issues that he had with 50 Cent. And he said, there's no issues. I love him. He loves
Mhm.
me. He was kind of joking about it. And then you hear these stories that come out, whether it's this one specifically
Mhm.
about 50 Cent or just in general, the picture that's being painted by the government in this trial. For you, has kind of the image of Sean Combs and who you thought he was, has it changed during the course of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks?
Certainly over the course of what we've seen, but I think I've seen an interview where 50 said, if
To cause damage. Sometimes all they have to do is reopen old doors and let people imagine what was happening behind them. Imagination is dangerous territory when trust is already thin. That's why the feud feels uglier now, more desperate, less calculated. It's not about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about preventing a shift in how history is understood. Once that shift starts, it's almost impossible to reverse. Control over the past is power. Losing that control feels like an existential threat. Dragging this conflict into the open wasn't accidental, it was inevitable. When pressure builds without release, it explodes sideways. The public stage becomes the battlefield because private influence no longer works the way it used to. Platforms don't answer to individuals anymore. Audiences don't wait for permission to form opinions. And opinions, once formed, don't care how loudly you object. What makes this moment different from previous flare-ups is the timing. The environment has changed. People are more skeptical, more willing to question
If you want to go nowhere, go to Diddy. If you're ready for your career to die, go to Diddy. It's long been rumored that Diddy didn't necessarily treat his artists properly, and if you look through his roster of artists, you'll see a lot of individuals whose careers probably started off really, really well, but they ended up with no money. That's long been the rumor. There've been rumors of abuse by Diddy toward Cassie and toward Kim and some other women as well. Even when he was at, I think Uptown is where he originally started. So there have always been rumors, but nothing really solidified and verified like we've had in this trial. It's been awful. I think it would be awful for anyone. I don't think his reputation is in the business world certainly will never recover. And even if he's found not guilty, his name is mud. I don't think that it's recoverable. I think everybody is extremely shocked, especially just some of the sexually explicit things. We have a huge morality issue in America. So anything that's like a little deviant is just not going to be really good for you. So I think everybody's a little shocked. I'm a little shocked and appalled and horrified, and I think a lot of people are. But this is not what we knew. We knew some things weren't right, but we didn't know just how wrong they were.
And I feel like we just knew because I mean we all grew up, whether it was some of the roles he had in movies, and I mean he was everywhere, and then his brands were everywhere, and it's like Making the Band was such like a hit show on MTV back in the
Hmm.
day. And there's that famous scene where he has all the contestants walk to Brooklyn to go get, I think it was Junior's cheesecake, and he's yelling at
Hmm.
people. And then it seemed like everyone around him in any documentary that he did, it was like, oh, that's just Puff because he's always just so angry. And then it's just this whole other level in the trial where it just, as an attorney, I mean, how effective has the government been as you just read, and we can only read transcripts really and kind of hear from the people we
Hmm.
have in the courtroom, but just at this point, how effective has the government been in painting the picture of this isn't just someone who was a domestic abuser, this isn't someone who was just a mean boss, but this was a racketeer who was running a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, and I think the forced labor issue. I think they've done an excellent job with that. With the transcripts I've been reading, a lot of the people are saying that they worked for 20 hours. Like that's the magic number, 20 hours straight. They, on a good day, we heard you'll get 4 hours of sleep. On a bad day, you'll get 4 hours of sleep. I think one of the what is it, a bodyguard said, if you sleep you're getting fired, like it was more rhythmical or rhythmic than that. I don't know, but you couldn't sleep around him, and I think that's what we saw with Making the Band. But again, we really didn't believe it. We thought it was for entertainment purposes. We didn't think someone could really act like this. And if an employee gave any pushback, uh you know they would either be terminated or they'd be threatened with reputational damage. They would be threatened with being blackballed, or they actually would be blackballed. And I think the government is doing an excellent job of proving forced labor.
And on that forced labor part, because on one hand, and I found it interesting, like George Kaplan, who is a former personal assistant for Diddy, like detailed all these, witnessing the abuse, he said, of Cassie. And then he was someone who would start work at 9:30 in the morning. And I think he said sometimes he went home at 7.
Standing narratives, more comfortable revisiting uncomfortable history, that makes old tactics less effective. Mockery doesn't erase suspicion, threats don't rebuild trust, loud reactions don't quiet curiosity. Every attempt to dominate the conversation only feeds it. This is the paradox at the heart of the situation. The harder someone pushes back, the more they confirm that something hit a nerve. Calm would have suggested confidence, silence would have suggested detachment, escalation suggests vulnerability. And vulnerability is exactly what powerful figures try hardest to hide. The feud reaching this breaking point also exposes how transactional loyalty can be, how quickly alliances shift when perception changes, how people who once stayed quiet suddenly find their voices when the environment feels safer. That doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens when authority weakens. Revelations don't topple empires overnight, They crack foundations. What makes this face-off different from past clashes is the timing. The environment has changed. Audiences aren't just consuming content
regarding their assassinations. Nevertheless, several interviewees during this documentary expressed that Combs' actions seem suspicious in hindsight. The documentary plays part of an interview that Dwayne Keefe D. Davis did with investigators looking into Tupac's murder, which had become a cold case. And on the tapes, Keefe D. says that Combs agreed to pay him if he killed Tupac and also rival record label head Suge Knight. Now, Davis allegedly admitted that his nephew Orlando Anderson was the one who shot the men, killing Tupac, injuring Knight. But Davis says Combs never came through with any payment. And by the way, Davis is currently awaiting trial for Tupac's murder in Las Vegas. Combs has always denied any involvement in the assassination. That was a big moment, I would say. Elizabeth, that was a big part of this. I didn't know that was going to be a part of this documentary.
I was really surprised as well. So I believe it's the second episode that dedicates a lot of time to it. And like you said, there have been insinuations in the past. They played video clips of, Sean Combs being asked in prior interviews in the 90s and 2000s, do you know, who killed these men? Did you have any involvement? He's always denied it. To be clear, these are just allegations. But yeah, that was really, really shocking. And one of the sort of a little bit more of the backstory behind his alleged involvement with Tupac was that a lot of the interviewees in the documentary were saying that Biggie, who was signed with Bad Boy and who was really close with Diddy at the time, was starting to form a friendship with Tupac, and they were getting really close. And a lot of the interviewees were saying, in their view, Diddy didn't really appreciate that. So I think a lot of the themes that you see again is coming up as him sort of wanting and needing to be the number one person in people's lives, whether it was personal, business. And it's really interesting because you see a lot of the themes that, again, the prosecution was trying to push forward that we saw in his personal life with Cassandra Ventura, always needing to be number one, not necessarily regarding the damages he's doing to other people in the prosecution's eyes, right? Playing out in the business sense. So the backstory is that he didn't appreciate the friendship that was forming between Biggie and Tupac, and therefore, that's where his alleged involvement came in. And then when, in terms of the non-payment, I think that was also a really shocking moment as well, because that's something we saw happening over and over in the documentary. Multiple people who are saying, I was cheated out of my share in the company. I wasn't paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. And allegedly, that's sort of how he treated the artists that were on his label. So again, it's the theme of always wanting to be number one and, not necessarily giving people their due, business sense or personal sense.
Okay, so with that, I will tell you, I think one of the most shocking allegations comes to Biggie Smalls, okay? You talk about finances, you talk about that, okay. One of the biggest names at Bad Boy, seemingly very close friends with Sean Combs. Well, according to Kirk Burrows, Combs, and again, this is his allegation, according to Kirk Burrows, Combs insisted that Biggie travel to Los Angeles as part of an album tour, and this is despite, the serious dangers that were present from the rivalries, the East Coast, West Coast. And once there, Combs allegedly decided to cancel a trip that Biggie was supposed to take to the UK, instead saying he needed to stay in LA. Combs apparently threw a large party, and after which, someone opened fire on the car that Biggie was riding in, killing him. Now, Burrows alleges that Combs used all of this publicity around Biggie's murder and his massive funeral to just gain his own fame for his own benefit, shooting to the top of the charts with the song Missing You, which featured, by the way, Biggie's widow. But this was one salacious claim that I really wasn't expecting. According to Burrows, Combs, allegedly, charged the costs of that massive funeral to Biggie's estate and had Biggie's recently renegotiated contract changed to make it more favorable for Bad Boy Records and less favorable for Biggie's loved ones after his death. Elizabeth, again, that one I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, it was really unexpected. And again, I think it speaks to the strength of the documentary.
Anymore. They're dissecting it. They're connecting dots. They're questioning why certain things were tolerated, why certain behaviors were normalized, and why silence lasted as long as it did. Silence, in this moment, doesn't look neutral. It looks suspicious. So both sides are forced into the open, whether they want to be there or not. One side leans into dominance, trying to project strength through confrontation, as if volume alone can drown out doubt. The other side leans into provocation, letting the chaos spread, knowing that instability weakens authority faster than direct attacks ever could. Neither approach is about resolution. Both are about survival. The revelation itself isn't even the most dangerous part. What's dangerous is how it reframes history. It invites people to reevaluate things they accepted without question before. And once people start reevaluating, power shifts, not instantly, but gradually, quietly, relentlessly. That's why the reactions feel so sharp. This isn't about pride alone. It's about legacy, about who gets remembered as a builder and who gets remembered as a manipulator, about whether success was earned cleanly or extracted through pressure and fear. Those questions don't need definitive answers to cause damage. The fact that they're being asked at all is enough. And when pressure builds, behavior changes. Suddenly, old wounds are reopened, old grievances resurface, statements become more personal, the mask slips, you can hear it in the tone, you can see it in the timing. Moves that once felt calculated now feel rushed. Confidence starts to look like defensiveness. What follows is usually chaos, accusations, performative outrage, strategic leaks, a flood of noise meant to overwhelm the original issue. The goal isn't clarity, it's exhaustion. If the audience gets tired, they stop paying attention. But that strategy doesn't work as well anymore. The modern audience archives everything: screenshots, clips, reactions. Nothing truly disappears. Even when the spotlight moves on, the material stays accessible, waiting to be revisited when the next trigger appears. That's why this moment feels so final, not an outcome, but an exposure. No matter how this face-off cools down, it won't return to the old status quo. Too many people have seen the cracks. Too many have started asking questions that don't have clean answers. Too many narratives have collided for everything to be neatly reset. This isn't about a feud anymore. It's about what happens when power built on control meets a system that thrives on disruption. When curated images meet unfiltered curiosity. When history stops being private property. The breaking point isn't marked by one explosive moment. It's marked by the realization that things will never feel as secure as they once did. And that realization changes behavior. From here on out, every move will be scrutinized, every silence interpreted, every outburst analyzed. The margin for error shrinks when trust is gone. When perception shifts, even neutral actions can be seen as suspicious. That's the cost of losing narrative control. The face-off everyone is watching isn't really between two individuals. It's between the past and the present, between old power dynamics and new ones, between a world where influence could be managed quietly and one where everything plays out in public. And once that collision happens, there's no clean winner. There's only exposure,